All right, here we go. Ready? All right, so this unit, again, as always, our focus is on a central question. We want to make sure that we understand how this ties into our big question. So our big overarching question for the entire year is always the same. It's how do we get along? So we have a society of people who have chosen to live together in a community. Once you're a member of a community, you're a citizen. We've went through all of that in the first unit. The second unit, once we establish why we need a government, we start asking this question about who among equals should lead. And so really what this talks about is no more complicated than going to a playground. You and your friends go to a playground. There's other kids there. If there's no adult supervision, somebody takes over, correct? Somebody ends up in charge. And the question is, how do we decide that in small groups? How do we decide that in big groups? How do we decide that in small groups? At the playground, who ends up in charge if there's no adults? Big Bear? The oldest kids, typically. Sure. Jack? The biggest. But now when we say the biggest, most powerful, the immediate vision we have, the way that we conceptualize that often is somebody is going to rule through fear. Is most of our lives honestly ruled through fear? Is it? If some people say yes, then we have some concerns because that's not good. Most of the time it's not. So why is it we follow the biggest? Jack? Potentially, here's what happens is we think they'll be a strong leader. Callie? You don't want to get hurt, but that goes back to fear. Maybe. Could the oldest maybe the more experienced? Maybe you feel more protected if somebody else was going to do something good. Here's what we do is when people have certain characteristics, we attribute other characteristics to them. So if somebody is tall, we think they're more intelligent. If somebody's good looking, we think they're more intelligent. If somebody can speak well, we think they're more intelligent. If they have a deep voice, if they're a man. All of these things are social constructs that we naturally do where we go, all right, these are people who would be good leaders. In addition to that, some people have trained through a variety of things, not even necessarily formal training, but have learned how to become leaders. And when there's a vacuum, meaning nobody's in charge, they kind of naturally step to the front and people go, oh, well, let's follow them. In our government, though, we don't really start with that. We start with elections. Elections are simply ways that we get to choose who's our leader. And this is critically important as a difference in our forms of government. This is what makes democracy run, is the idea that we, the people, give our consent, permission, to the government to be in charge of us. And the way that we do that is we hold elections. So our short answer for who among equals should lead is really just this. Whoever we, and that means citizens, choose. That's really our short answer to this. Whoever we as citizens choose. And we do that in this process of elections. That's the process. So we have to figure out who's going to be the best possible leader. Well, let's go with this guy. Well, I disagree. We should put this girl up. And then we have a debate. Now, our elections have two different types. And the first is a primary. Somebody give me a key characteristic that lets you know this for sure is a primary election. Big Bear. No. Callie. Good. So it is within parties. Which means really it's the whole idea of Democrat versus Democrat or Republican versus Republican. What is the purpose of a primary election? Callie? Good. So to pick a person, what do we call that process? The primary is the type of election where we pick this. First of all, what is the person that we pick called? Candidate, not a delegate. So you're right, delegates are for the meetings, but the candidate is the person that wins the election. So at a primary, we're going to choose our candidate. And the candidate is what? Good. They represent the party. All right, well then, what really are political parties? No. Candidates are people we choose to represent us. No. Political parties are not things we believe in. No. Otherwise, we wouldn't call them interest groups. We'd call them political parties. So what are political parties? Yes. Good. So we start with that. People with similar beliefs. But immediately we start having some confusion because you go, well, what about interest groups? What about public opinion? What about political action committees? Right? So we have to find a way that we can differentiate between political parties and interest groups. Don't write these words that are on the side down right now. Those, obviously, you can see I'm going to be pulling in later. Okay? So how is a political party different than an interest group? Jack? I like that, but it's still a little mushy. I think you have the right idea, but I don't know if that's a great definition. Should you have your hand up or you're not? Sobiak? Good. So their goal equals electing candidates. It's really, really no more complicated than that. Their goal is to elect candidates. Now, we have a variety of different types of political parties. What types of political parties do we have? That's an example of a party, not a type. The Democrat and Republican parties are an example of a type of party. They are not a type of party. Jack. Congress is a part of government, not a political party. No. So I'm going to put types here. The first is major parties. A major party is one that has a chance to win an election. They're important. They're powerful. Give me an example of a major party. Obama is not a political party. Obama is a person. Big Bear. Good. The Republicans are an example. Obama is a Democrat. Obama is not a political party. So this is the key, is what we're trying to do, if you look at this, is we're going from broad to very specific, and we're just providing examples. How do you know the difference? All right, what is another type of political party? What's that? Democrat is not a type of political party. Democrat is a different major party. What's that? We don't call them minor parties. Callie? Well, keep following along. Isaiah. Third parties, good. Why do we call them third parties? Isaiah? Good. They're an in-between. They're not as powerful as major parties because we have two that matter. We've always just had two because of the way our system is set up. And the third parties are more powerful than, for example, just like Mothers Against Drug Driving. That's an interest group. The NRA is an interest group. The third party, what would be an example of a third party? Modern third parties. Federalist is an example of a former major political party. A modern third party. They never win elections, but they always have somebody running. Yes. Black Panther is not a third party. No, it's not. It's actually more of an interest group. Now, I would say that you could argue that, but they don't really spend their time trying to get people elected to politics, so that's why I wouldn't classify them as a political party. Yes? Libertarians. Any idea that a lot of people support that the libertarians have, another political party will co-opt. Remember we talked about that? Hey, the libertarians say we shouldn't spend as much money on big government. So a bunch of people like that, well, the Republicans end up taking some of their ideas. So we can think about the idea that any good idea that the libertarians have, that a lot of people will support, a major party will take that idea. That's why third parties don't win. Give me another example of a political party or a type of political party. Jack? I will give you the example, prohibition. What type of party was the Prohibition Party? What is the Prohibition Party? Sobiak. Illegal, not legal, illegal. Oh, sorry, I have headphones on. So the goal was to get rid of alcohol, so they have a single yes, single issue. So this is a single issue party. They only care about one issue, in this case prohibition, and their goal is to get somebody elected that will pass it. If this party is successful, what happens to it? I don't know why I put issue. No, we know that obviously because they're successful. What happens to the political party? It disbands. They've won. Nothing else to do. Go home. Last type is called an ideological party. What is an ideology? An idea, good. Give me a party that rallies around an idea. What's that? No, that is not a, that could be, but that would be a single issue party. Gay marriage would not be an ideological, because it's not, an idea is a unifying way of looking at the world. Jack? World peace would be single issue. Yes, Big Bear. The Great Depression is a single issue. Good. It's the way of looking at the world. Yes, Jack. That's the Greenback Party, or the Gold Standard Party. That would be the single issue. It would be things like the Communist Party. The entire way that they look at the world is their ideology. And so that's their party. They're looking to make major social changes. So that's pretty much it. So far, here we go. This is pretty easy. Who among equals should lead? Well, we get to choose, so we're going to hold elections, and we're going to have a primary, because we're going to have different political parties, which are just simply groups of people with like ideas that try to get their candidate elected. Well, what kind of parties are there? Well, there's a bunch, but really the only ones that matter, and for those of you at home, I'm holding up air quotes here, the only ones that really matter are the major parties. So, how do they get people elected? Well, let's start. Hold on. So how? Well, they find out public opinion. How do they find out public opinion? Good. So they do polling. They canvass. And most of this is what we would call grassroots campaigning. What is a poll? Good. Just a series of questions you ask enough people that you get an idea of what they're interested in. What do we think canvassing means? Let's say canvas. Something to paint on. It's also something that covers something. Good. Very good. Canvassing is door to door. So they call them door knockers. They walk up, they knock on your door. Hi, I'm with the so-and-so for so-and-so campaign. I'd like to take a moment of your time to talk to you about my candidate. That's grassroots campaigning. Why do they call it grassroots? No, not they're annoying like grass. What's the lowest level if we're going to start from the bottom up? The grass. And what's the lowest part of the grass? The roots. So the idea is we're going to go from the bottom to the top. Instead of starting at the top down, right? Washington, D.C., national campaigns, we're going to start from the bottom up. Have your neighbors convince you why you should vote for other people. So getting local people involved at the grassroots to try and get people elected. Okay? Now, once we have this information on public opinion, what they care about, what their views on, what do we do now? Good. Now, we start using propaganda. What is propaganda again? Good. Advertising, commercials. Those are all examples of it. They're just tools that do what? What is the purpose of propaganda? Persuade people. That is our goal, to persuade. There's no way I spelled that right, but I'm in a hurry. Persuade. I missed the U. There it is. I missed something. There. Persuade. So their goal is to persuade you. Give me the types of propaganda. Somebody with a hand, hold on. Just because I don't want it going all at once. First type, somebody with a hand, Big Bear. Mudslinging. Yes. Yes, mudslinging. Card stacking. Next. Yes. Glittering generalities. Yes. Yes. Plain folks. Next. Yes. Okay, so that was something we learned about in the propaganda stuff in the packet, but that's not how we label it based on the textbook. Yes. Testimonials. And there's one more. Yes. Contrast ads. Your job is to know the difference between these, okay? So we've taken enough notes on it that you can go over this, but in general what we're doing is we're either trying to create a favorable opinion about us or an unfavorable opinion about our opponent. And the whole goal is to get people to vote for us. What is the most important job of a political party? Louder? To fundraise. So when we say how, none of this happens without money. If you think back to the Win the White House game, it didn't matter your strategy. It didn't matter your popularity when you walked in. The real difference is, were you able to out-fundraise your opponents? So the question is, where do we get this money? Say that again, Callie. Sure, in the game it was states that are high in money. In real life, how do we get money? Yes, Big Bear. Good. So we have to get the money from citizens or corporations. Now, this is what a lot of the notes over the weekend are on. I gotta move something down here. One of the biggest ways that we see political parties getting money is from interest groups. First of all, what is an interest group? Big Bear. No. I mean, it's a rough idea. That's more what they do, not who they are. Yes. Good. So now this starts to sound exactly like what? That we've already talked about. This sounds exactly like a political party. So hold on. Group of citizens with a common interest. Ugh. You can tell I need more sleep. Group of citizens with a common interest. So now the question is, well, how are they different than a political party? What is it that they do? What is their goal? Yep. Good. They influence government. Are they trying to become part of government? And that's the big difference. Interest groups go, listen, I don't want to be a senator. But what I want my senator to do is this. Give me an example of an interest group. Yes, Jack. Good. Mothers Against Drunk Driving. One more example. Teachers Union. So, do I want to be in the Minnesota Senate? No. But do I want the Minnesota Senate to promote education, public schools, cheaper colleges, more funding? Yeah. So how do we do that? We have people who work for interest groups that are called what? I don't know if I have it up here or not. No. Representatives, lobbyists. Hopefully that goes all the way down. We'll see. Nice. There's my mad tech skills. I could flick stuff. What is a lobbyist then? Yes. Good. They work for interest groups or citizens or companies, but it's got to be a big enough thing that can pay them. So they work for interest groups. We'll just say interest groups or corporations. These corporations are kind of their own interest group. We could see corporations being their own interest group and part of an interest group, because let's say you're McDonald's, you have a lot of money on your own, plus you're part of the fast food industry, so that would be an interest group. They work for interests or corporations, and they influence elected officials. So they lobby. What does that mean? I just try and advocate for a group. Okay. Now, there's all sorts of yes, go ahead. If you are, that's a cynical way to look at it that I would completely agree with. So what you're saying is they basically go to them and say, hey, we want you to do this, and if you do that, we'll get you a bunch of money from this interest group to help get you reelected. And if you don't support this bill, then we won't give you money. Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what it looks like. Now, they can't directly pay them, but they talk to them and they say, hey, listen, this is the stuff that we need to do, blah, blah, blah. They're very influential. There's all sorts of rules and regulations limiting access that don't really work if we're honest. Yes? Is it blackmailing? No, because do they need the money? Hold on, is that the only source? And blackmailing is more the idea of, if you don't do this, I'm going to tell people stuff. I'm going to get you in trouble. They're just saying, listen, we will support you if you support us. And if you don't, well, then we're not going to support you. Make sense? So yes, in a cynical way, you could look at it as blackmail. I don't know if I would completely agree with this. Okay? One thing from the notes over the weekend, make sure you understand what political action committees are. Okay? Make sure you know what political action committees are. Hold on, I'll go back down. All right. Now, that's what political parties do. Now, in addition, there's other things political parties do. They serve as watchdogs. What does that mean? Which other people? Good. I just realized I don't know how to draw a dog. I can draw a cat, though. It's kind of like a... How's that? Is that okay? Hey, don't judge. I'm trying here. Looks like clues. Nice. See, somebody's positive in here. Don't always have to go negative. Ready? So they serve as a watchdog. The idea for that is if the other party is doing something wrong, their job is to step up and say, hey, this isn't acceptable, and they're there for another plan. They are an alternative. So if you're unhappy with Obama, who can you vote? Republican, because we have another party that says we disagree with him as well. Their job is also to keep us informed. Now, I'm moving this because I know I need it a little bit. Oh, that didn't work. No, it bounced. I don't know, it bounced. All right. So let's talk about, actually, you know what, we will do this. I guess I'm going to flick it harder. Let's talk about voting then, real quick here. So we're still talking about in a primary election. Okay, we're still talking a primary election. We want to talk about voting in this sense. What do you have to do in order to be in the electorate? No. What is the electorate? Good. Electorate is people who can vote. Give me examples of things you need to be in order to vote.
18.
Good. 18. Good. And you have to be registered. Very good. So 18, citizen, registered. That's basically it. There's also can't be a convicted felon, those kind of things. But in general, you do that. Now the question is, who can vote? Now, how do we vote? Good. We don't call the voting center, no. So let's start with this. Ready? Not quite a polling station. So first thing is this. Let's start dividing it up. This is that's a state. How do we divide up Minnesota? Good. So we divide it up into counties. Right? Right? So we divide it up into counties. Hold on, nope. From counties, we go to wards. So now we have a county, and then we divide it up into wards. And then we take a ward, we divide it up into a district, and then we take a district, and we divide it up into, starts with a P, precinct. And within your precinct, there is a what where you vote? Polling
church.
Place. A polling place. Now, hold on. That's not a bad answer to say polling church because guess what? Are a lot of polling places churches? Typically, polling places are churches, schools, federal buildings. They can't be at private businesses. Why not? Good. They could try and influence you, and we don't want that. So we basically, to vote, divide it into smaller and smaller things until we get to the polling place, and that's where you actually fill out your good ballot. That is your ballot. Don't judge my Minnesota. Oh, okay. Good. I do this 4th and 7th hour. Yep. Okay, good. So, state, county, ward, district, precinct, polling place, that's where I cast my ballot. A precinct is just an area within a ward. So, you get that a state is part of a nation, right? A county is part of a state, a ward is part of a county, a district is part of a ward, a precinct is part of a district. The precinct is the smallest geographic location that we have divided up. Okay, so here's the problem. So now you've changed a voting district. So the question was, if this is District 200, then what precinct are we in? Or what ward? That's school districts. School districts are different than voting districts necessarily. Make sense? Good. All right. We have won the primary election. Remember we talked about caucuses. Those are the meetings that they hold. They elect delegates. Okay? Almost done, guys. Focus. To go to the general election, how is the general election different? Good. So it's Republican versus Democrat. What does the winner get? They get the office, because it's not always the president. So the winner gets the office. Thanks. Not very. Very vibrant color. You're sick of black. How is the presidential election different than all other elections? Yes. Yes, it's on a much larger scale, but that's not the key structural thing. How do we elect the president? Yes. No. The Electoral College. Electoral College are the people selected by the states to represent them. They're the delegates, the electors, who go to the conventions and select the president. In AP Gov, you'll talk about why we have this system. We just don't have the time to go over that. Now, the last thing we need to make sure you understand is this. Ready? Whoops, that was the wrong button. Last thing that you need to understand is this. Closed, open, runoff. What are those types of? Yes, elections, but that's not the word we use. More specific. Primary elections. So make sure you understand the difference. Any questions? What? Good. 1 second.